The Modern Jeeper Show, the show about Jeeps, Jeeping, and Jeepers.
Well, hey, Modern Jeepers, it's time for another episode of the Modern Jeeper Show with me, Matson from Medical Oak, and Mr. Modern Jeeper, Corey Osborne.
Hey, Matson.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm all right. How about yourself?
Not bad, not bad. I got to say something. Last one, I realized that somehow I totally cut you off. It was as I was saying, hey, how you doing? And you started answering, and I went, great, and I totally cut you off. I don't know where that came from. And
You sound like me.
I cut it out of the audio.
Question.
Yeah, I cut it out of the audio, but I couldn't cut it out of the video. And it was like, boy, that was an asshole move.
Is that kind of like one of those things where we talk to people and we go, hey, how you doing? And they start to tell you how they're doing. And you're like, oh, I really didn't care.
I did. No. It was like, because I do care. But it was funny. I thought Jessy caught it because she looks at you sideways a little bit. So if you guys haven't watched the video, watch the video because you'll notice I totally cut him off. And Jessy kind of looks over him a little bit. And it's like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah. Well.
Speaking of which, Jessy, Rockstar Jeep Girl, how you doing, girl?
I'm great, Matson.
Good. It's good to have you guys on again. And I'm loving this for all of our listeners. This is a different video format. If you're watching the video, we're trying things, we're experimenting, which is just what we do. And hopefully things get, if you like it, if you don't like it, a lot of you have been watching the video and on YouTube, and that's great. If you just like it for background audio, that's great. If you like having just however you want to set it up, we appreciate it. We appreciate you guys being a part of the fan group.
Yeah, I think our listeners by now should know that this has all been an experiment for the past 90 plus episodes. We've tried, I think, a little bit of everything, and the guys who sit in a studio and they have a microphone set up and it's a soundproof room, and that's too easy. We had to make this a lot more complicated. So for our listeners, I think that the ones that have stuck around all these episodes and have heard the variations in audio quality and video quality, all of these things that we're trying, it's because we want it to be better for our listeners. So there you go.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what's interesting is we have been experimenting. The one stable has been Uber Conference, but I even experimented when I did my other podcast for a few episodes, like a totally different platform. And we tried different platforms. Now we're trying different video platforms, and none of them are perfect, but we're hoping that we can put something together. I even want to see if we can do a YouTube live event at some point because YouTube has a great streaming system. There was one I was looking at and I was just telling you about, and I remember what the name is, but literally we could just do a phone call, like a live event, phone call, instant podcast, live event. So there's just so much fun we can do. It's almost like we should do live just because that's about how much planning we put into it.
Well, with our schedules, we just never know. It's kind of like 2020. We never know what's going to happen day to day.
Right. Dude, it's almost 2021. I'm hoping this thing.
Thank goodness.
I'm hoping like New Year's it ends, like officially, like they'll wake up January 1st and COVID will be gone. 2020 will be normal.
I don't know. I'm skeptical anymore, and I think that I guess I'll throw out my little listener service announcement that I feel like I've done for the past few episodes. This morning there was an article in the news, and they talked a little bit about just the emotional stress and all of these things that are going on in people's lives as they adjust to things. And us as Jeepers and us as outdoor enthusiasts, we're a little bit separated from some of that, but these families that have kids that are having to learn at home, and we're so attached to our devices and our iPads and our tablets and our computer screens, and we're so used to interacting now with people through video, it's a little dysfunctional, and there's a lot of emotional stress and that's going on with people, and having to deal with my mom's issues and her passing. All of these things, they just kind of keep being building blocks on our shoulders, right? So reaching out to each other, whether it's through video, now they're saying, don't get together for Thanksgiving and all that. My suggestion, since big box stores can still have people there. I threw up on Facebook this morning that we should all just gather at Home Depot or Walmart, set up a couple of big tables because we can be there. It's fine. You just can't be at home. And
Dude, I think you just gave Walmart. I think you just gave Walmart a great idea, like Thanksgiving at Walmart.
Right?
They need to serve Thanksgiving dinner.
That's right. That's right.
It is interesting because I think this is one thing we talked about this last week, and it's so weird to me because I'm seeing it all over the place, and that is Christmas has started.
Yes.
Nobody has waited till after Thanksgiving. I don't know if everybody's skipping Thanksgiving or what, because I didn't get the memo. I walk my neighborhood and the kids are excited because there's Christmas trees up in the houses and they're wondering where ours is. And whenever all the neighbors who like usually were the first ones after Thanksgiving, which wasn't me. I spent Thanksgiving weekend like relaxing after the turkey. I don't spend it putting up stuff, but I bought some new decorations this year, so we're going to try it. But they already have their stuff up. And I missed it. I missed the memo. Maybe it's a woke moment. I don't know, but
it was right after Halloween. It seemed like we're just going to skip Thanksgiving. We're just going to have Christmas now. And this whole don't gather for Thanksgiving, but still spend money and still shop for Christmas because we'll be fine by Christmas. I didn't get that memo either. I've noticed that like Target and those kind of places now, they don't even do the big sale after Thanksgiving anymore. Now it's just a month-long sales event. Like, when did that happen?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and for all of our listeners out there that are wondering, yes, Metal Cloak will do a sale. But it's going to be a week long. I've actually eliminated, and this is my own personal, I'm just not going after a Black Friday. I've never liked the term Black Friday. It has nothing to do with the current woke movement, or it just has to do with the fact that it, to me, and the origins are like it was a negative thing, right? It's a negative, right? Because people got hurt and they got trampled.
Let's go beat each other up.
To buy that one toy, the last Tickle Me Elmo. And so we're just having a Thanksgiving sale. And there's going to be lots of cool stuff. If you're listening to this podcast, you get a little insight because we're going to be giving away stuff. We're going to be giving away gift certificates every day. And the size of the gift certificate on what would usually be Black Friday is going to be pretty damn big. These will be, so it's like, why not? Like we can do that. We'll do some fun stuff like that. We also will have the ModernJeeper calendar, which is about to go to print. We'll also have the, we have some new ornaments we made now. So it's like, there'll be some fun stuff, but I want to enjoy it and have a week of Thanksgiving. And I want to remind people that it is Thanksgiving. And I enjoy the fall, right? I like having the fall decorations up around the house. I like having the fall wreath and all stuff. I enjoy that part. There's just a beauty in the fall. And to skip it because suddenly we're going to go into Christmas.
Yeah, no, not right.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it.
I think everybody's just in the mood to get the year over. Like they're rushing it out the door.
In that case, let's just have New Year's.
You're right. Let's just go to New Year's.
Calendar is all arbitrary anyway. Why do we have to do December? Let's just skip. Let's just ship it. Just call December 20. Let's just make it over. When I used to bowl. I used to bowl in a league years ago. And there's this technique where you draw a really big fat line between frames. That's you just go in there, drag that big line. And that line is specifically to mentally tell you, that's like, I'm starting new. I'm starting fresh. I just, totally screwed up the last frame. I'm doing the new frame. There's a big line. So we're going to do that. We can do that at the end of the month. The end of November, we're driving the big fat line and starting over.
I like it.
Although some would say that's what the election was supposed to be, but that would we'd get into political discussion. We're not allowed to do that.
Well, this is kind of another exciting time of year because we've just gone through all of our planning stages. We've looked at dates for what next year, what we hope it's going to be like, I don't know, our best guesstimates, I guess we can call them, for events. Right. I've actually, for the folks that are watching the video, I've got my Death Valley 2020 shirt on. We're looking super forward to Death Valley's trip for next year. all of our adventures this next year are going to be, again, we keep improving on them as we go year over year. And our guest, this overlanding trip in Death Valley, I don't know, I kind of feel like it plays into our guest's realm, and maybe he'd even want to join us. But I know I'd like to spend a few days with him out in the middle of nowhere and pick his brain some.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we will definitely do it. But before we get into our guest, what's the big news?
Oh
my Lord.
Man, did Jeep release some kind of big engine vehicle?
Oh.
I don't know. I heard something
Dude,
about it.
I got to tell you, Jeep is impressive right now. I mean,
Yes.
It is really impressive. Now, I'm going to get a little critical of Jeep a little bit. The current the president of Jeep, he is not as good as Michael when it comes to like doing presentations.
Right.
Dude, I mean, like he's a little sketchy, but still, he did the presentation, and this three was it 392? It's just phenomenal. Oh my God! I mean, they didn't just. And it makes a lot of sense to me that they didn't try to do this with the JK, because what they actually had to do and the amount of work they had to do, the frame reinforcements, the airflow, because we all know there's airflow problems with Jeep engines.
Absolutely.
Right?
And anybody that ever's done a V8 swap, that's their main concern is, now how do I keep this thing cool?
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. On ours, we have one, and we end up doing the Daystar hood, right? But it still doesn't necessarily work great. You put a big, massive aluminum radiator in the front to try to catch it and cool it down.
Right.
Still.
So for them to figure all this stuff out, and it's already got a 2-inch lift, right? Of course, it's a Mopar lift, but yeah, we won't talk about that. But it's phenomenal. I mean, where do you think this thing's going to be sitting at price-wise?
Well, I've heard it all over the board, and I've heard as high as 92, because of the whole 392. That may be a marketing thing.
That's interesting.
Where
did the 392 come from?
Where did it come from?
Yeah, the 392. What does it reference? Just for our listeners.
392?
Oh, I actually don't have a clue as far as where the Hemi 6.4, what that all started from. I don't know.
But the 392 itself, for our listeners, does that indicate anything besides the fact that it's a Hemi? Like, is that cubic inches? What is that?
Oh yeah, that's cubic inches. Yeah,
Okay,
392 cubic inches.
I was just clarifying it for our listeners.
Yeah.
Everybody knows I'm not the mechanic. I'm not the tech geek. Corey is. That's
well,
why.
And what's really interesting to me is some of the websites are it's just kind of funny how they're portraying this thing, and the comments that we've seen on social media. And I was even corrected. Everybody said, well, this will be great, doing rear wheel burnouts and all that kind of stuff. You ain't getting that. You ain't getting that transfer case. You're getting a full-time 4-wheel drive transfer case. There is no 2-wheel drive. And that's how they'll save. That's how they'll save this rear axle, because people were going, 400 plus horsepower on a Dana 44. Jeep's just going to be, shelling rear ends out of the thing.
Well, dude, I tell you, if you're a company like Fusion or Dynatrack or one of these other axle companies, that's going to be a great opportunity for you, because people are going to want to have the rear wheel burnout. They're going to want to upgrade. They're going to want to put an Atlas in there.
Exactly. They're going to pull out this all-wheel drive system, and you know how integrated that is. It's going to be a project, yet, I mean, Scott Bloom, bless his heart, he actually corrected me in a post yesterday and said, this is not all-wheel drive. This is full-time 4-wheel drive. And
what's the difference?
So an all-wheel drive system, this still has a transfer case that will have 4-low in it, whereas an all-wheel drive system typically doesn't have a 2-speed transfer case, or a low range, I guess. I was disappointed that it wasn't going to get a 4.1, or a 4-to-1 transfer case like the Rubicon has, but I get it too. With a bunch of horsepower, that's going to be such a low crawl ratio that you're not going to be able to stop the thing. There'd be so much torque behind a 4-to-1 gear reduction that 272-to-1 is going to be just fine. Yet I'm a rock crawler guy, so I like the low geared, low range stuff, but this isn't going to be a Jeep for those guys.
Well, it can be. It'll be interesting to see.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about, first off, a top end Rubicon comes in at $60,000, right? And if you buy a top end Rubicon JL and you go down and have a guy drop a Hemi into it, it's probably 25 grand to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're getting this for between 80 and 90,000, you're probably getting a deal for everything that's added onto it. But then take that and add in, then wanting to upgrade an axle. The guy who's going to be buying this, honestly, right now, money is cheap. Money is cheap. I mean, interest rates are great. So it's a perfect time to come out unless the world changes next year.
Yeah, I think that it's been interesting. There's been some websites saying that this thing's going to get a 6.4 liter V6. And I don't know if those are typos, but I've seen that on a couple of different websites now. This is not a V6 engine. This will be a V8 engine. This is the Hemi. I saw some comments about, are these axles the same Dana 44s? They're a wide track Dana 44 that are also, the front end is getting the Gladiator style front end with, it won't have aluminum knuckles. It's going to have cast iron knuckles in the front. I was also told that the rear end is not the same rear end, that this one will have thicker axle tubes. So again, now we have different variations in something as simple as what front and rear ends are we dealing with? Which one did that come out of? Which one's what am I replacing? Is it apples to apples, or are we talking about two different things?
Right. That'll be interesting. I don't know. People are excited about it. They're excited about its performance. They're excited about what it can be. The fact that it's coming up this quickly, right, compared to others. Now, you also saw on the 4XE, you recently shared a picture with me of the front, of how those front axles are, right?
The 4XE had, the picture that I was sent shows the front axle being CV drive shafts, little rubber boots over where we would typically see a U-joint type of front axle. This one had CVs. I don't know if that's something we're going to see. I doubt we'd see that on the Hemi powered Jeep, just because I don't think that strength wise they'd be there. But who knows?
But is the 4XC also full-time four-wheel drive?
I don't know. That's the electric Jeep, so I don't think so. I don't think so. I think you get the standard 4-to-1 T case and all that.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. That one is meant to be a rock crawler still. I mean, they are putting charging stations on the Rubicon, so they expect you to actually go out and play. By the way, I don't know if you guys watched that video. There's a moment where he messes up and says Gladiator.
Yes, I caught it too.
Like the front of the Gladiator. I'm like, what? Yeah. Wait a second. Is that a Freudian slip? Is there going to be a Gladiator version popping up next year?
Probably.
Well, they say that there's no plans for the Gladiator to have it, but
and that they managed to keep this whole thing secret, that this 492 is ready to go. A 392.
Right.
492. That's wishful thinking. The 392.
You know, you mentioned something about and he was very proud. The Jeep's very proud of the water fording capabilities of this 392. Yeah. The inside of that hood is crazy, and I was looking for the actual stat, but the water coming in through the scoop, the porting and all of the under hood stuff going on there allows this thing to move like 13 gallons of water a minute out of the engine compartment.
That's amazing. What do they call it? They call it the Hydroglide or Hydroglide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the technology for that. Even if water goes into your hood scoop, even if you get a wake wave over, it can separate it out. I mean, now I got to imagine that there's some like Ford Bronco competition going on here. The fact that it's already got 2-inch lift, which means you pretty much out of the box get 35-inch tires, right? And which of course matches the Bronco. What's the Bronco's doing? Right. Out of the box, you have the fording, you have the strong, and if you even notice, they came out with the half doors, and it was very conspicuous that with the half doors on and everything set up, it looked a lot like the Bronco image of its having all of its doors removed or all of its top removed. It was very big and open, right? So the Jeep just did the same thing and said, We got you, Bronco.
Yeah, we got you there.
Slapped him across the face.
I did see that somebody posted about, and I haven't been into the build options from what a dealership is able to see, but the half door option is actually a dual door option, and that's a $4,000 add-on.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. Those half doors on a JK are pretty expensive too.
Right.
Factory half doors are not a cheap thing.
No, they're not. They're not.
Yeah. So, but imagine that if you're doing the half doors, and you probably have different options, like you could still do the hard top with half doors and not get the soft top pieces, all the different variations. But you start adding it up. Like I went into price in just to confirm what a top end Rubicon will be. And I went in and started, okay, base Rubicon, started adding things in there and selections and stuff. And without any negotiation, I was at 59 grand. So,
oh yeah.
You know,
it's amazing to me. If you go onto Jeep's website right now at jeep.com and you were to go look at what your options are, there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 different trim packages that you start with. So this is the, this is the Sport or the Willys Sport or the Islander or the high altitude or the 80th anniversary. I mean,
you just start with those.
I can't imagine what the guys in the factory get oh, we got to build this one. Well, let's get out our containers and this one goes, it's part of this and it wants some of this.
They are so streamlined over there.
Yeah.
Right? It just comes down. Everything's handed to them. The computers are just basically saying, here's your piece, here's your piece, here's your piece. Everything drops in. It's amazing. It would be cool. Maybe one of these days we can do a special modern Jeeper. Like when everything opens back up, we can go out there and we can organize with Scott maybe to do like a Modern Jeeper episode at the Jeep headquarters.
Yeah, there you go.
And do like a tour, because I would love to see that. I would love to see how they do all this. It's just amazing.
I got to drive around the outside of the building.
I could watch my 392 coming off the assembly line.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, right.
Get a special invite.
Yeah, it'd be like, babe, please. Hey, I'm excited today because guys, listen, I get so busy, stuff just doesn't get done like with the Gladiator. I've still got my Gladiator. It is still 100% stock. Okay. Today, they started bolting stuff on.
Nice.
So literally little things happening to it. I still don't have all my wheels, so it's going to be interesting riding around on my stock wheels with a 3.5-inch lift on it. I'm still waiting on those because apparently there's a shipping container that got lost someplace.
Down in the middle of the ocean.
Out in the middle of the ocean, somewhere in the Pacific. But I'm excited. So that moving forward on that, it's going to be fun to do. But I love that idea, that 392.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really, I'm old school. I'm not really a power guy. What the power that I have in my LJ is I'm completely happy with. It's my understanding everybody wants to do 4-wheel burnouts and that's just not my thing. I don't care.
I can tell you that happens. Like when we dropped our LS, that happens once or twice. You do it and you get it out of your system. You do a little video about it and then you move on. Because then you realize you just ate up half your tire.
Right. These aren't light vehicles, and it turns out that isn't that called like an exhibition of speed? Isn't that illegal?
No, not if it's on your own private property.
People tell me you're just a party pooper.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So it is interesting though to note is the where was I going to go with this? I told it after the party pooper statement, I went blank. My mind went blank. Anyway, enough about the Hemi. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. People are going to enjoy it. And it's just another variation Jeep is offering, which is just making the world of Jeeping just that much more open, accessible, and attractive to people.
Yep, very true.
There's another thing about the world of Jeeping that is open, accessible, and attractable to people. And that is understanding where you're going. And
that's a huge part of this. Yes,
it is. And the great thing about it, there are so many trails across the country, so many trails and so many places to go. But many times we don't even know where we're going or how to do it unless you're with somebody you've been. Or in the case of something like the Rubicon Trail, I'm going on the trail with a bunch of people, but what actually is all these different places? What are these places I'm at? Where I'm at on the trail? Well, our guest today has been working on a solution with that. And that is Jake White with CartoTracks. Hey, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, how are y'all?
We're fantastic. Glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I thank you for inviting me. I have a voice for newspaper and a face for radio, so I'm a perfect fit here.
Nice. Well, we have a cute little picture up there with you and your family. Where's that taken at?
That was at Sand Hollow just last October, just last month, for the event called Trail Hero. Happens every year. It's a killer event. We haven't missed one, so family excursion for us.
That's awesome. So for people who don't know, what is CartoTracks and what's your mission and how did you get started?
Well, we are a mapping company first. That's the primary job that we have is we make maps. We're kind of unique in this space of off-road navigation for sure.
Kind of unique. You're like the only one doing what you're doing. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, pretty much. So that's pretty true. I don't know that we've got any direct competition as far as exactly what we're doing. And what we're doing is making maps, which that sounds funny and you laugh, but it is a big differentiator in this world. Today, most off-roaders see off-road navigation apps as creating maps, and in reality, they're just vessels to showcase data. And there's a lot that leaves to be desired when you get into the nitty-gritty of actually utilizing that to navigate. You're just looking at lines and points, and trying to get a good, clean display of what you're looking at is kind of difficult in that format. So what we do is old school mapping. The fancy word for that is cartography, and that's the first half of our business name. CartoTracks is cartography, and GPS tracks is kind of both shoved together to make a business name. So that's really the basis of our company is quality cartography, which means displaying a lot more information than you can with just points, lines, and areas in a regular old school handheld GPS unit. So, and of course we deliver it in a package that's available for folks to download onto smartphones and tablets and iPads and that kind of thing. So you can get a bigger screen if you want to upgrade, a tablet or an iPad and mount it, or you can just use what you already have, which everybody, even grandmothers have got smartphones now. So just use what you got instead of buying extra hardware. You can just use what you have. So that's really the value of what we do. And it's a pretty big differentiator, like I said, as far as the difference between, and I've kind of coined the phrase, I think it's a little nerdy and dad joke-ish, but apping companies instead of mapping companies. Most of our competition is really more an apping company. They're not actually making maps. They're just showcasing data. And there's a ton of risk in that just because a lot of that's crowdsourced data. You don't know who it was that collected it or what they used to collect the data with. And, not only how spatially accurate it is, but they're not taking the time to, attribute that information with the trail difficulty. And, some folks are going off property onto other people's land and trespassing sometimes. Not saying that's always the case, but it can happen and you don't really know it. So that's the thing about us. Everything we do is fully vetted by landowners or land managers where we're mapping to make sure that it's 100% accurate and it's legal. So if you get a map from us, you can trust that is legal, accessible land that you can go and wheel on and not get in trouble and not cause the Forest Service or the BLM or whoever else to close the gate, because that's what they do. It's the cheapest option for them. So trying to help mitigate that. So yeah, we're weird.
I think that the differentiator for our listeners is, I've done quite a few articles on our adventures, and I use an app called GAIA, GAIA, and they've seen our write-ups and whatnot. But again, like you said, these are just portals of data being overlaid onto a screen. They're not really giving me any information. I can see some of the things from the Forest Service or whatever layer I happen to be viewing. But you and I, we met each other. I think the first time I ever talked to you on the phone, I was actually out at King of the Hammers. And I know my way around King of the Hammers pretty well, Johnson Valley area. And you kind of reached out and said, hey, man, try these maps and take a look at what I'm doing. And I was blown away because it's actually the data. it's an underlying, at the end of the day, it is a map. But when you use your information on top of that map, and it actually shows you the trail you're on or where you're at in a particular area, much more clearer, and something that we as off-roaders can understand better than a giant topo map that shows me as a dot on some elevation lines. That doesn't help me. I need to know, hey, there's a trail next to me. Where am I in relation to that trail? And that's where your stuff just shines. It just makes it so much easier.
Yep. Yeah. I remember that call. Been a few years, but yeah, definitely.
It's been a few years.
It changes everything. When people first use our product, they're usually just blown away. I'm not thumping my own chest here. I mean, it really is a aha moment when they see that and recognize that's an actual map. It's not just data. So, and not to discredit GAIA, they have a beautiful app and it really does function well. But there's just that inherent risk of what you get, what kind of data you can get. And it's up to the user to go and acquire that data and try and suck that into the app.
Right.
It takes some legwork. So what we deliver is just a full package. If you purchase a map from us, like for instance, a KOH race course map, it has everything you need to know for that race course. And it shows spectator areas that are designated. It has every race mile marker. All the pertinent information is all there visible where you don't have to even tap the screen to pull up more information. It's all cartographically rendered in a way that's appealing and aesthetically appealing, and you can read it just with one glance. So it's very useful. So yeah, it's special. And then just this year, just prior to KOH this year, really it was last fall, I guess. We'd become great friends with a guy named Mark Matthews that's just been a recreational wheeler for a long time. He's been involved with KOH and Dave Cole for a long time, and has just this immense amount of data that he'd collected with GPS units through the years of Johnson Valley, just as a whole. And we worked with him to kind of hone in on a good quality map of a master Johnson Valley map. So that's now available on our site in, as a supplement to the specific race courses that we release every year for Ultra 4. You can also go out there and wheel, outside a race course and get around the whole valley. And it's huge. It's a giant map. It goes way up north, beyond the typical extents of your regular race courses that we see every year. So, Mark's a super guy. He's got a whole bunch of extra information he put in the margins that we help wordsmith all that. So, I mean, everything from where you can get firewood to the last gas and where to get cell signal to, everything. It's all typed up in text in the margin. So, you got some amazing literature built into a map.
It's absolutely amazing because you're giving people a guide for their experience. Right. And it's more than just a map. It's more than just a place to go, but it's like, and I hearken back to the days when we used to use like real maps, right? And you could unfold a map and it actually had more information on it. Like here's a little town, and AAA would have like little notes on the side of the map, like places you can find things, and it was that's awesome because we get so used to just using these phones for trying to get us around. And occasionally, if you're lucky, and you're like, you could even be on the Rubicon Trail, and there's like, hey, look, it caught me. I'm actually on a trail, but it doesn't tell you anything. Right. So do you actually get into Jake on the maps as like where the obstacles are, or what sort of elevation climbs are occurring? I mean, I haven't actually used your map, which you gave me all the access to use it, and I haven't gone out and used it yet because I've been on a trail running forever. But
shame on you.
I know. I'm the worst host for ModernJeeper ever, or maybe I am the ModernJeeper, spending more time on my computer than actually wheeling. But do you get into that, like where the obstacles are, where Widowmaker might be, or where, depending on where you're at on a trail?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the big value of what we have. It's more than just a line. We get what I call the tribal knowledge from, the locale. There's usually somebody that knows this backwards and forwards. And in case in point, Rubicon Trail, we were on at the end of October with a guy named John Arens who just knows it backwards and forwards. He's the guy that drives the poop
truck. Good guy, John.
Yeah, super guy. And I mean, once I spent, the first few hours with him, I knew immediately this is the guy. 100% score. I mean, he's the best as far as getting this kind of information. He knows every named obstacle. he can tell me all kinds of extra stuff about history, about obstacles, why it's named that. There's so much cool stuff about the places that we wheel that it's just kind of lost in the data these days. So we try and bring all that in. Like, for instance, did you know Cadillac Hill, right? What's Cadillac Hill named for? Why is it named Cadillac Hill?
Because a Cadillac that fell off it was buried down below for a long time.
Wrong.
What did he
Wrong.
say? What did he say?
It's not actually a Cadillac.
Not a Cadillac.
Right.
You know that?
It's not a Cadillac. It was what was the car?
I think it's a LaSalle. I think that's what he told me. I'll have to go back in my notes and look. But yeah, it's not even a Cadillac. So, or a LeSabre or something. I don't remember what the name was. It was some other name. It's not even a Cadillac, which is hilarious.
LeSabre Hill just didn't sound good.
Right.
No, absolutely not. No,
Somebody
no,
went and said, call it. And quite frankly, it probably was a Cadillac knockoff. So
could have been. Yeah, absolutely. But just that fun stuff that's just, I don't know, it's just fun to me. Some of the history and stuff. And really the Rubicon is one of those places that there's no place that I think could compare history-wise. I mean, it's just such a cool historic trail. That was a cool experience for me getting to go there. I mean, I'm an Alabama guy, by the way, so I'm getting to travel places with this business that I would have never gone otherwise, probably. But it's definitely like the Carnegie Hall of off-road. Everybody's heard of it. Jeep named a Jeep after it. I mean, goodness.
Right.
What a cool place. So yeah, awesome experience. But yeah, I mean, we add in all the different named obstacles. You know, the ones that people see YouTube videos of and pictures of, from Big Sluice to you know, Cadillac Hill, Little Sluice, all those big names that you recognize but don't know where they are. As you're cruising along the trail on our map, you'll see those pop up as you're cruising along with your little blue dot, and it'll track you along with supreme accuracy.
That's awesome. Man. Your process, and just to kind of get into what your process is, you literally have to find the center point of every trail, and you're going through the center point of the trail, right? No matter what that happens to be, how wide it is, or are you following the likely path of every vehicle, or you just, because like in the case of Big Sluice, there's a couple different ways to go down. Well, there were a couple different ways to go down. Now that the tree has fallen down in the center, it's going to be like one straight shot. But
yeah, right.
What do you do in some cases where you have, like right after Buck Island, there's a section where you have a choice of going left, up, or you go right. You know, and which do you use? How do you figure out what your map's going to take people?
So that's a great question, and it's Rubicon's a little different from other places in that there's a designated route that is the county access right-of-way type deal. There's little pins that they've driven down into the rock, and so that paired with John's knowledge of the line, we pretty much run center line of the designated route. So, but of course, there's always go-arounds. There's some that are acceptable legal go-arounds and you know, bypasses, and then there's other instances where they're really truly illegal bypasses going on. Mm-hmm. When you get into Little Sluice, there were 3 routes. There's the main route, then there was a Toyota bypass, which I find rather humorous because, you know, Toyotas have to go that way or something because they can't go through the middle. And then there was I can't remember the name. I think it was a long bypass that goes around on the north side of Little Sluice. So there's always instances. And then there's even another one that's an illegal bypass that, of course, we didn't map. We don't want to showcase that. And
which one is that?
People down that route. I can't tell you. That's classified.
It's secret. It's secret agent stuff.
Because there's the high bypass that goes up above,
right.
Which I've taken before. In fact, we did that on ModernJeeper Adventures trip last, because I didn't need to go through Little Sluice with everybody, so I just went around. There is the bypass, like for instance, the Gladiator took, which really isn't a bypass; it's more of an escape, where you just go up onto the slab out to the right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the one bypass you're talking about to the north is the one that, for years, was used because Little Sluice was simply unpassable for most rigs.
Right.
And so it just goes. But the high one is kind of interesting because it's a little sketchy. I mean, you're next to a cliff. It can be a little sketchy. It's kind of fun going down. But
So for us, I have to use some of my own discretion sometimes. You know, when like in the case with the Rubicon, I had John's immense amount of knowledge that I leaned heavily on that. As we get closer to producing this map, we're still in the process right now. It's not live yet, but it will be soon. we'll go through a process where the powers that be that with El Dorado County and others, we'll have them bless it. So we'll make sure that everybody's happy with what's being showcased on that map so that we don't, send people down the wrong path. But the key is trying to get it right the first time on the ground when you're collecting it. And then you work off of that and make sure that everybody's happy with what's being shown. So, but there's other places in the country where you get into some of these private parks in the eastern United States where it's just a dense network of trails. And a lot of these trails have named obstacles on them. Sometimes the trail itself is named for the obstacle. That's the primary obstacle. But there's bypasses around them. And what my standard operation is to go and run the route that the trail is rated for. So you take the line that the trail is rated for. That way people know what they're getting into. And I want to make sure that they're running the main line. If they break or have to take the bypass, they can take the bypass, but they know that they're running whatever it's rated for. That's what they're entering that trail, anticipating what they're gonna encounter on that trail. Right. So that's really important. I mean, it's difficult because you end up with folks a lot of times the reasons why bypasses are created is because people don't realize what that trail is rated for, and they end up on it in a lesser built vehicle or maybe a not adequate driver to be able to accomplish that obstacle. And they say, well, we'll just go around it. Well, that's really not the right way to do it from a tread lightly standpoint.
Right.
That's the wrong way. So we're trying to kind of be the middleman in the middle of all this, to try and lead people down the correct path and know what and make sure they're prepared for what they're heading down and they don't get into trouble. So
Jake, how many different parks, or I don't want to break it down to trails, but how many areas do you think you've mapped so far?
How many maps do you have?
Yeah.
We've got over 50 maps in our library on our website, which is a pretty good bit. And those span from Uwharrie, North Carolina, in the middle of North Carolina, to soon the Rubicon and Johnson Valley with Mark Matthews' map that we host there, and 7 years now of KOH race course maps as well. So a lot of maps nationwide, and some of them, some of them are individual parks, some of them are individual trails. When you get into Moab, it's so spread out around Moab that you got to just kind of, sometimes we'll be able to get 2 or 3 trails on one map. But sometimes it's just one trail per map. So those cost a lot less, obviously. You just buy into, whatever particular map you need, for a particular trail. But sometimes there's parks that, I couldn't even count how many trails in there. We've got parks in the eastern United States that have 50, 60 miles of trail in 1,000 acres of land.
I was just thinking about Winrock.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's huge. We haven't mapped Winrock.
Let's go out and do that this next year.
Take just like a weekend. We should be able to knock it out. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a plan. No problem.
Yeah, that's a vacation time for sure.
The process definitely takes some time. Like, for instance, S'more, Southern Missouri Off-Road Ranch in Missouri, just east of Springfield. That's, I think they're a little bit over 50 miles of trail, as I recall, just shooting from the hip here. And Brandon, the park owner, Brandon Powell, and I mapped that together. And we started Monday morning mapping, and we worked all day for a couple of days and finished at noon on Thursday. So that was a full canvas of the park, every single trail, with the park owner, who's the guy that knows it better than anybody else. So every named obstacle is named. We'll collect a point in the data in the center of the obstacle. And then, like Matson was asking, about as far as how do you run that trail and how do you collect the center line, we'll mount the GPS. We've got a really fancy pants GPS unit that we collect our data with. It's like surveyor grade, I guess you could call it. It's sub-meter accurate in tree canopy, which is just awesome.
Wow.
That blows my mind to be able to do that in tree canopy. So I can collect, 12 months of the year, not worrying about waiting until leaf off period in the fall and winter. So we collect the data with this unit, and then we post-process the data where I hook it up. I suck the data into some software that we pay for a license for, and it brings in data from ground control stations all over the country. It's kind of like, you can kind of think of it like a satellite that's on the ground, like an absolute known point that's also putting out data. just like the satellites in space and orbit over us. And so this system brings that into the equation and further refines the accuracy of the data. So my cleanup process is a lot easier with this software because it takes the line and it kind of smooths it, so to speak. Y'all all seen bad GPS data, right, from a phone or a handheld Garmin or Magellan or whatever, and it's like real jumpy and you get little vertices. It just shoots all over the place. It's not a nice, clean, smooth, sweeping line. My data, after I post-process it with this software, with that ground control station data, it's just nice, sweeping, smooth curves. So the maps that you see when you download a CartoTracks map, you see these nice sweeping lines. I haven't edited it much at all. I'll do a little bit of cleanup. Occasionally we'll get little erroneous data points in there, but for the most part, that's what the GPS collected. It's absolutely amazing. And yeah, I mean, that's top of the line stuff. It's a pretty expensive package that we pay for, but that's what our whole business is founded on, is really accurate data. So when we get out in places like Sand Hollow where you don't have tree canopy out west, I've actually seen standard deviations in our data at Sand Hollow on the bare rocks with no canopy, less than half an inch, which is just amazing. It's just so cool to be able to get that kind of accuracy. So it is imperative that I'm running absolute center line, because when a customer downloads the map and they're looking at that line's the line. So if you start to deviate off of that, Sand Hollow is a great example. It's really mind-numbing to sit there and go up some of those trails. And like Milt's Mile, for instance, there's a couple of different lines you can take. There's a Milt's Light that's kind of the easier line that you can take. But if you're running Milt's Mile and you want to say, I've gone to Sand Hollow, I'm going to run Milt's Mile, and I'm going to say that I did it, our map's the only way to really do that, to have an absolute center line. Because the minute you start to deviate off of that line and you head off on the Milt's Light or something like that, you'll notice your blue dot is starting to move off that line, and you can stop yourself and back up a little bit or cut back over to get back on that line.
Of course, you got to pay attention, because I know when I was a navigator and navigating in the races at Ultra 4, like, this is fun, we're going to get, wait, turn back that way.
And there's so much sand. There's so much sand. And when I went with Charlene, I was the co-driver. So, of course, we used Jake's map to get around. And in the middle of sand, you don't have a trail.
Right.
You keep heading this way, keep heading that way.
Well, and for the folks that are watching video, I'm actually displaying Jake a picture of the Sand Hollow map on my phone.
On Sand Mountain.
Cool.
What it kind of looks like for people, and this is just what an overview of the entire park, basically. But it's extremely detailed, and I don't know that there's any other, we can pull up all kinds of navigation software. Now, you still strictly work with Avenza Maps, is that correct?
At the moment, yes. That's the platform that is kind of the tool that you use to utilize our maps. So the maps are all bought on our website, and then they download into Avenza. And
Gotcha.
it does its job, just at the basic, the main job. It has one job, and that's display our map and utilize it in an offline environment. So it does that. So that, by the way, for those that don't know about what we do and how this works, the maps work offline without cell signal. So you got great signal at Sand Hollow, but you don't have any signal for the most part in Johnson Valley. So all of our maps are designed to work that way. So the file that you're downloading into Avenza Maps is stored locally on your device. So when you pan and you get a new view of the map, from outside of the margins of the map or whatever, and you pan a little bit to get a new view of another trail, it's not pulling from a cell tower. It's pulling from your internal memory on the device. So your phone or your iPad or tablet or whatever. And that's invaluable. So that's kind of a little side note that I wanted to add, just make sure folks are aware of that. That's really nice. You don't have to do all the effort to try and cache something like some other apps do. It's when you download the file, it's everything you need for that area.
What I'm showing
which
again,
is really nice.
I've got a couple of the Sand Hollow maps pulled up on my device, and you can see the different, the two different files there. Then you can pick the one where you're at. So, for example, I have the Sand Mountain OHV map, and then the West Rim side on my device. Is there a limit to how many maps you can store on your phone?
There currently is an Avenza, and that's one of the reasons why we want to get away from Avenza ultimately. They've got, and there is a go around. You can pay them $30 and they'll unlock this limit. So there's a limit of 3 currently for the free download version of Avenza. So for most wheelers, you really only need a map or 2 per day typically. But the frustration is you got to go and delete those maps at night and go and download new ones, for the next day of wheeling or whatever. But for the main Sand Mountain, you can really get away with just the main Sand Mountain map and then West Rim map. That's where most of the main trails are. And then, you can delete those and download some more to go run up to Tokerville Falls or Dinosaur Tracks or some other map, in the region. We've got a bunch of different ones in that region. So we've got some bundle options too now on our website. We relaunched the website back in January of this year, and we added in all kinds of cool features like bundles of maps. So you can go and download a Sand Hollow bundle and just get them all in one purchase. So it's a little bit discounted if you buy them all at once. But there is a limit of 3, and then you can pay them $30 to Avenza, and that they'll unlock that, and then you can download even more. And then it's really just the limit of the internal memory of the phone.
Of your phone, gotcha.
Right.
Jake, let's talk about process a little bit. So just from a timeline, you just did the Rubicon Trail. How long and how much work and how long does it take to go from actually doing a trail for it being live and ready to go?
It varies totally. I mean, by the different projects that we're on. The Rubicon should come pretty quick. We should have that available probably after Thanksgiving, early December. We should have that map live and ready to go. So the process to kind of go through it is, obviously I go there and I run the trail with this high-end GPS unit I've got, and then I post-process that data, and then we've got the really, really clean, accurate data to work with. And then I'll go in, I'll pull it up in our software that we use and clean it up just a little bit more. If there's anything that needs to be edited or revised, anything in what we call metadata, that's all the extra data that I'm attributing those trails with. So if there's anything that needs to be modified a little bit there, I do that then. Then I hand it over to my wife, Jennifer, who also has a background in geography. We both have degrees in geography. So we're not just wheelers that just kind of stumbled our way through this. We actually started out as map people that like to wheel, and the whole business and everything really just kind of fell in our lap. So it was
what a great way to turn your career into your passion. That's awesome.
Right?
I know. We're very, very blessed to have that background and then just have this kind of land in front of us. And so we're just kind of cruising through it, just taking it a year at a time, growing slow and steady, and just doing the data right, making sure we're making good quality maps, and we've been growing that way. But I hand that data off to her, and she works on it to do the cartography, where basically you take the data, the raw data, and turn it into a pretty map. So we're pulling in contour data from U.S. Geologic Survey. We're compiling that. If there's private properties that we need to delineate, we're having conversations with tax assessors' offices to get, the data to get the absolute boundaries that we pull into that to showcase that. Like on a private park kind of thing, you end up with, this is kind of foreign to most of y'all, I guess, because y'all are West Coast folks for the most part. I know Corey travels quite a bit and goes to some of these private parks, like S'more, for instance, in Missouri. It's a great example. I mean, he's surrounded by other private property owners, and he doesn't want to, make the neighbors cranky. So he wants to make sure that all of his riders are staying on property. So we go to the county tax assessor's office and say, we need the data to show the property boundary for Brandon's property. And we pull that in, and then we crop all of our contours to that. So everybody has the boundary shown. So they see as they get up close to the boundary, if they've gotten off trail, they should see that to begin with. But if they get off property, then that's a whole nother animal. And we've got a nice bold property line, so people see you don't want to be trespassing on some other guy's land, adjacent to it. Sometimes out in the woods, you just don't know.
Especially what part of the country you're on, because there might be a shotgun pointed at your face.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Them damn four-wheelers are all out here again. Gosh darn it. Don't you see my no trespassing sign? Get away from my still.
Yep. Yeah.
So do you see a time where maybe what if, I don't know, I'm just kind of looking down the future here. if somebody requested it, would you sell them like a GPX file or a KML file or?
We don't, and I'll tell you why. We get asked that occasionally, not super often, but it's
'Cause most
typically
people don't know
the
what a
reason
GPX file is.
Okay, so it's a good question, and a comparable
Corey.
file type is a GPX, a KML, let's see, USR. They're different
XML,
file types.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all are basically files that contain all of the information that you need for GPS data, and there's just different formats. So GPX actually came from Garmin. USR files are Lowrance, which is what a lot of the West Coast racers do out in the desert. They all have fish finders in their Jeeps, and I never understood that. But
hey,
but anyway, everybody's got a different.
I think it came as a fish finder. Amazingly enough, has the best satellite signal or whatever. It just seems to work.
Well, that's usually because you got an external antenna mounted on the top of the vehicle. That's what that comes from. So it's not as much a product of the hardware in the cab as it is that external antenna. So
of course, we can talk about that in a minute, impervious to mud and rain and everything else that can land on you.
Yeah, and racers like them because they have a really big screen. You can get color screens, and they have buttons that you can hit pretty easily when you're at speed bouncing around in the desert. So there's definitely some advantages, but there's some huge disadvantages in that all it does, like a lot of other handheld GPS units, it doesn't actually display a map necessarily. It displays data, and that's the key. You know, if you've got a point that you've entered in on a race course saying, you know, big cactus on the right, whatever. Sometimes it's difficult to get that displayed properly as you approach it, so you can see what that hazard is. In our maps,
and plenty of us know that because there's absolutely no data about, watch out for that ditch that you need to slow down to, almost to crawl to get through. You're just looking at the map and flying out there, and it really comes down to almost having a navigator playing the same game that navigators play in rally sports, right? Where you've got to know it enough to be able to pre-run it. And if you haven't pre-run it, there's all kinds of hazards. Oh yeah, we're going. It's a straight line, and all of a sudden you go boom, and lose your jump because that map doesn't show you anything.
Yep. Yeah, that's the thing. So the data and maps are two different things. So just two totally different animals. But the file type, so going back to Corey's question about the sharing of data, like a GPX or something like that, the main reason is file protection. So our maps, the way they're designed and the way they're downloaded into Avenza, it's completely protected. So if I sold one map to one person and we don't have that protected, they could just, email that out, the file, and pass it around. Then we've sold one map to a whole four-wheel drive club. So from a business standpoint, that's the primary reason. But there's also the whole system that we've created with the way that CartoTracks works. When you buy a map from us, you're locked into us as a subscription. So all of our maps now, you have two options. You can do single 1 year subscription. So when you buy it, you got it for a year and you have access to it for a year. And then the second option is an annually renewing subscription. So you have a lower buy-in cost, and then every year you have a little bit lesser amount that it charges you every year on the anniversary date of that initial purchase. So what it does is it guarantees you've always got access to the latest map from CartoTracks. And
can you do a site-wide subscription? Like you just want access to all maps?
We haven't yet, but we've been considering it. Challenge is just trying to figure out what's the right dollar figure to put on that, that would properly attribute that with the proper amount of value to the package that you would be getting. And that's always changing. Every time we add a map, that would probably have to go up just a smidge. So,
well, the beauty of subscriptions is most people just automatically renew. So your actual cost of customer acquisition goes down.
Right.
So once you have them in there, they do it. It's $100 a year, $200 a year, whatever it is. But it ultimately, you get that cost of acquisition goes down, so your actual return on investment goes up.
Yeah, it's something we've been considering, and the more we think about it, the more appealing it sounds. So that could happen in the near future. I think it's a possibility. But the subscription thing, what's cool about the subscriptions is Let's just say, let's see a good example. A great example is Sand Hollow. That place is just, it's technically an open OHV area. So there are designated trails that people say, I want to go and run Double Sammy or Milts or whatever. But that's not to say you couldn't go and pick your own line and create a new trail. And Rich Klein and a lot of the locals that have moved there in the off-road industry have been doing this. So every year, we add in more trails to the Sand Hollow area that come online. And the beauty of our maps is when you buy one of our maps, like say you grab the main Sand Hollow map, if we add in a new trail, like right before Trail Hero this year, we add a couple of trails. One of them's named Resurrection. We got the data collected. We put it into the map. When we push that file to our server, every single customer that's bought that map gets an email notifying them that, hey, remember that Sand Hollow map that you bought? Guess what? We've added some trails to it. Here's your latest update. Since you're subscribed to it, go delete the old map and re-download it, and you'll have the new trails on it. So it's super cool. You're electronically connected now. So if we just sold a GPX track, it just kind of goes away like an old school paper map. We don't have any connection to the customer anymore. It's gone. It disappears into a glove box somewhere.
That makes sense. And for our listeners and our followers, I think there's a big difference between the differentiation again between what you do and what we see on like a lot of these other apps. And I'm going to show another picture of your actual map that has, number one, there's a lot of sponsors that take part in this, but it's an actual map. Like if I was to view the Sand Hollow map on my phone, it's a map of the whole area. Now, if you zoom in close, since I'm not there, it's not actually tracking me, but it can go down to the level of all those individual trails. It's like looking at a paper map. It's looking at a picture of a paper map, and then the Avenza app is able to track you on that map, if that makes sense.
It has all the value of an old school paper map that we used to love to study and try and plan out trips and stuff. But then it has another dimension added to it, and that's the geographic coordinates that are built into it and the ability to put that magic blue dot on that old school paper map. So you get the value of the paper map plus the blue dot, and that changes everything. It's just a whole nother realm of navigating on these trails. It's really cool. Yep.
Well, that is absolutely awesome, and I know from the ModernJeeper standpoint, we're so thrilled to be able to have that kind of data. It's really where the world's going. It makes it again. We talk about ModernJeeper being about accessibility, right? Getting more people into the Jeeper lifestyle and having these stamp maps, as we started this conversation, makes it more accessible to people to be able to do it right, tread lightning on it. Obviously, there are thousands of trails across this country. And it's going to take a long time for your process to get there. Are you planning on scaling up at any point to be able to start having others be able to go out and do trails? Because you could probably only get a dozen to 2 dozen done a year as far as actual locations. Is there any way that you're looking at scaling up so you can have maybe other teams across the country doing trails?
Yes, there is, and there's some things afoot. I can't discuss at the moment, but we definitely have that in the ringer.
Well, if you were that kind of podcast, we'd be pulling the strings going, come on, tell us.
You can come out to Montrose. We'll track some.
There you go.
Yeah, you need to do Montrose, the Northwest. I mean, Tillamook, that whole area is beautiful up there and some great stuff. But let's talk a little bit about you, just because it is a Jeep show about Jeeping. I do want to touch base because you do have a pretty special rig that when Corey showed all those little sponsors on the bottom of the map, all those guys are there because they've helped you go out and do things, and they've done a lot to help your rig be the one that goes out and does a lot of these trails. So tell us about your Jeeping life.
Yeah, so there's maybe something none of y'all know about this Jeep that I have, and my passion for Jeeps and kind of the background a little bit that I'll share. This will be kind of fun for this podcast, I think, for a lot of Jeep people that are out there. So we'll back it up a little bit before we even talk about the folks that are supporting us, that are on those maps and supporting, this Scrambler that I have. It's a 1982 Jeep Scrambler, but we'll back it up a little bit. A I'll date myself a little bit, and my first Jeep, and kind of where it all started for me, when I was about to turn 16, talking with Dad, trying to figure out what's the right vehicle for me, I almost ended up with a 1969 MG BGT, little British sports car, right? Y'all seen these things. The BGT was the hatchback version of a MGB. And Dad, being the smart man that my dad is, has had British sports cars and knew what that entailed. And talk about unreliability. It trumps anything people might say about Jeeps and having stuff break. They all have Lucas electronics, which are terrible. Lucas is just awful. So Dad didn't see this as a very reliable vehicle and talked me out of it. And about a week later, the guy that was selling this little BGT that I was looking at had a wreck in it and just destroyed the thing. So it was like fate. That wasn't to happen. And so it kind of worked out. I was crushed. I mean, it was a beautiful little car, but Dad was smart enough to tell me about Lucas and how horrible the electronics were. The joke is, why do all the Brits drink warm beer? Have y'all ever heard this? Why do all the Brits drink warm beer? Because they all have Lucas refrigerators.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So anyway, I'd seen a Scrambler before, and I just thought that was the coolest thing. And Dad saw this 82 Jeep Scrambler at a transmission shop for sale out front, which that's not a good sign. It not only was it a transmission shop, but it had a tow bar on the front of it. Like, it's prepared. You're going to be towing this thing a lot, right? So anyway, we ended up buying this thing, $5,000 back in 1993, 4, somewhere in that range. And everything I know about anything automotive came from Dad and I working on this Jeep together. First thing went out was the transmission. We swapped out the T5 and put in a T18 and a center force clutch and a T18 transmission. And it just kind of grew from there. So I drove that in high school every day, daily drove it in high school and then on into college. And then my wife and I got married while we were in college and in grad school, geography, and then moved to Huntsville, Alabama for a mapping company. And the frame on that Scrambler was cracked, and I needed to find another frame. And I really didn't think that it was very repairable. So I started shopping around on a Scrambler forum and posted up and said, has anybody got a Scrambler frame in the Southeast somewhere? And they said, yeah, talk to Matt Donaghy, the guy that owns Great Tops over in Columbia, South Carolina. So
yeah,
I got in
Matt's
touch
part of the ModernJeeper family.
Yeah, well, I at that point never knew Matt. I didn't know Matt at all, and reached out to him, and he said, yeah, so here's the deal on the frame. He said, I've got one, and you're welcome to it. It's from, at the time, it was called Advanced Frameworks, the company that's now Throttle Down Customs. And what they were doing, so Matt was the founder of the Scrambler Owners Association. We call him the godfather of the Scrambler Owners Association, of which I was already a member because I had the Scrambler. And he said, so here's the deal. We're trying to build a charity Scrambler. We're getting donated parts, and a lot of our members are donating things, used parts and stuff, new old stock stuff. We got a tub, we got a VIN, and I contacted the AFV, not AFV, AFW, Advanced Frame Works. And the guy said, yeah, I'll donate one if you'll buy 3 more. So Matt bought one of the other 3. Another guy bought one, and he had one just left with no name on it. So I ended up buying it. So they built the charity Scrambler. Yeah, so they built this Scrambler, and I donated some parts, and they paraded it around the country to car shows and Jeep events and stuff, and sold raffle tickets, and the proceeds went to Blue Ribbon Coalition and St. Jude Children's Hospital. They split the proceeds 50-50 from the ticket sale. So I had 100 tickets, sold them all to coworkers and friends, had another bundle of 100, and I sold all but 9, and was coming up on the raffle drawing, and I said, that's it. I'll just donate $45 or $5 a piece. Make my donation, and we'll call it done. That'll be my donation. And we went to Clayton, Oklahoma for the annual scramble that year. They did the drawing. Guess who won it?
You won it.
Really?
Yeah, $5 raffle ticket. That white Scrambler that I drive, that's the CartoTracks Scrambler, was a $5 raffle ticket, compliments of the Scrambler Owners Association. So the next year, they elected me president of the SOA as my punishment. and I served for 10 years as the Scrambler Owners Association National Club president up until last year when I said, guys, I got to step away. Y'all got to find somebody else to take the abuse. And so, yeah, I stepped down last year. They've got another great president. The club's going just fine. And they do an annual scramble every year. It's the only official event of the club. They skipped it this year because of COVID, and they're going to push it into 2021 at Roush Creek. But rest is history, kind of. So it's become a mascot vehicle for CartoTracks. It's a really cool Jeep. It's got this advanced frameworks frame underneath it. The tub was redone, painted, and it's got some cool stuff in it. And then since we've created the CartoTracks business, we've got a lot of great support from industry that recognizes the value of what we do as far as mapping and keeping people on trails, and they want to support us. So a lot of the product on it comes from our partner businesses that have supported us through the years. And so, it's been a fun ride since then, but that's the real history on the Scrambler that I've got. It's pretty cool. And I've still got my other Scrambler. My wife and I went on our first date in that thing.
Wait, you still got your other Scrambler?
Yeah, I do. I've got two actually. So
that's awesome. Well, if you look at
for all of our
neighbor's
barn, what's that?
For all of our listeners, just the picture right there that you have, the family that you have there, that picture of your family that we're showing that's the Scrambler you won, right?
Correct. Yep, that's it. The other one I've got is also an 82 model. It's a Sherwood green, metallic green color. It's a really dark color. A couple of speeding tickets I got, the cop said it was black. So yeah. But that one's stashed. It's stashed over across the street in the neighbor's barn. And just yesterday, I mailed our deposit for building a Miracle Trust building. I don't know if y'all have heard of this company, Miracle Trust, but we're going to be building a building next to our house so I can stuff my Jeeps in it. I've got 5 Jeeps. I've got 2 Scramblers. I've got an 86 Grand Wagoneer. Got a 92 XJ Briarwood, the wood paneled XJ. And we've got a 1950 Willys Jeepster as well.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a Jeep guy through and through.
True modern Jeeper. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, none of them are modern. The newest one I got is the 90 XJ.
Modern Jeeper is not about the Jeep. It's about the lifestyle. It's about the appreciation. It's about a true modern Jeeper. We don't care what kind of Jeep you have, what your personal background is, or what you like to do with your Jeep. That's what modern Jeeping is all about. It's all about being together as a group of people that are all here for one reason. That is to enjoy ourselves out on the open trails with our Jeeps. That's it. And all you've done really by the reason we want to have you on here, besides the fact that yes, Metal Cloak is the sponsor on both your Rubicon trail, and you didn't mention you're doing your Fordyce trail too.
Yes, that's correct. Absolutely.
Those are amazing, and we're so happy to be a part of it from our side. But just the fact that you are providing a service that I think makes it, again, accessibility, education and accessibility, 2 things ModernJeeper is incredibly passionate about. It just makes it that much better. And I hope really our listeners just get a chance to go out there and do it and to find it. We usually would do a tech tip of the week, but I think our tech tip really is use a map if you have access to it. Right, Corey?
Right. No, I think that I think this whole podcast is a tech tip, and
absolutely
folks getting more familiar with how to use things. I think that's a huge thing as we all go out and we haven't used our devices or technology very much. Getting familiar with it, even going in, opening Avenza, go on to Jake's website, buy a map, even if you're not going there, but load it up. Get familiar with how to use these tools. I think that's a huge, huge benefit.
Absolutely. Jake, for all of our listeners, man, we really appreciate you. We could probably talk for hours, but I don't want to spend that much time doing editing. But for all of our listeners, okay, the primary place they can find you is CartoTracks.com.
That's correct. Yep, okay. That's it.
And if they want to reach out to you on social media, where do they find you?
Yep. So CartoTracks is the name that you'd search for on Facebook and Instagram. That's our primary 2 platforms where we're pretty active. So just CartoTracks. It's CartoTracks, and that's it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So for everybody out there, we really appreciate you being a part of us, being part of the listenership. We're getting closer and closer to our 100th episode, which is going to be pretty cool. Next week, we are going to do a special Thanksgiving episode. And Corey's showing you, if you're watching the video, showing the logo, which I like. I like that little cool logo and setup. But get out there and try CartoTracks out. We have so much to do the rest of this year. And into next year, we're looking forward to, again, hitting that 100th episode, which will be early 2021, that's pretty big, buddy. That's pretty big.
Yeah, right. 100 episodes.
Right.
Crazy.
For us to actually do something and almost every week talk 100 times. It's just now what we need to start doing is we need to do the side episode, which is like the bloopers episode, or the
you write all the outtakes.
The explicit episode, which is where you and I are just talking on the phone.
Right.
Right. The second. Anyway, again, for all of our listeners, make sure if you're enjoying this episode, you can check it out on YouTube. We really appreciate the views that we've seen on YouTube. It's incredible. I mean, it's just blowing us away how many people are actually watching us and wanting to see us sitting here doing nothing but chatting with people and with each other and making fun of each other. But also make sure if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button for us, right? More likes, the better. Right. If you're watching us on your latest your listening device or whatever podcast distributor you have, let us know. Go out there, give us a review, tell us what you like about it. You can reach out to me at Matson@metalcloak.com. You can reach out to Corey at metalcloak.com, Jessy at metalcloak.com, and just let us know what you're interested in. Of course, what's your email address out there, Jake?
It's CartoTracks@gmail.com.
Perfect. So
Easy.
Reach out if you have any questions. And if there's a trail in your area that you really, 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 really want to do it, or if you're a company and you're interested in actually helping Jake get out there and do that trail, that's part of the impetus. Come on out there and help organize it and be somebody who can do it, whether it's a private area, private trails, or a public trail, or someplace that you really think that you would love to have it set up. Reach out to Jake and let's see if you can't schedule it out in 2021. That being said, my friends, anything else you want to add, Corey?
I think we're good, man.
Fantastic. Well, again, it's another amazing episode of the Modern Jeeper Show. We appreciate all of you joining us and sharing with us, and tell us what we should think of this episode. Otherwise, we will see you on the trails.
Cheers.
See ya.
Adios.